Hey guys, Dr. Brandon Crawford here. I'm the founder of the Austin Center for Developing Minds. We are located just north of Austin, Texas in Cedar Park. And what we do is we focus on developmental functional neurology. Hopefully you'll have a chance to catch my lecture because I'm going to be taking you through what that process looks like and why it's so important to focus on rehabbing the brain in the right way, at the right time, with the right frequency and oscillations and all this kind of stuff, right? So I'm very honored to be a part of this conference. This conference is very meaningful. I love all the people involved, and obviously the cause is fantastic. So thank you again, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Hey everyone, Dr. Brandon Crawford here. So I am co-founder of the company Shed Light. Shed Light is a company that focuses on the use of laser and light therapy to improve the health and wellness of the brain and body. We're happy and excited to be a part of this conference. And so, if you have any more questions or want any information regarding how laser and light therapy can improve your health, please check us out. Go to shedlightcoldlasers.com. Thanks.
Everyone. I'm excited to be with you here today. I am going to give a talk on meditation and mindfulness. And I hope you find it interesting. I'm putting my contact information on the screen so you can reach out to me if you want any follow-up information. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I also do consulting for companies who want to provide wellness instruction for their employees. So I do a lot of trainings, corporate trainings on, how to have a trauma-informed work environment, how to manage the stress of COVID, for example. So feel free to check out my website, which is right there at beingwellwithbianca.com. And you've got my email. And also, if you'd like to follow me on Facebook, I have a Facebook page where I post a lot of mental health tips and articles and things like that. And that I also post on my page every time I put out a new blog. So I've done some blogs on PTSD recently. I've done some blogs on, I'm about to do one on empathy. So anyway, check it out. I'd love to have a conversation with you. I wanted to start by giving you my connection to Team Luke Hope for Minds. So not only do I, work in the mental health world, but 3.5 years ago, I became connected with this organization after my son's near fatal car accident. When my son was 17, he was in a near fatal car accident. We were told that it was likely due to his brain injury that he wouldn't make it. But after being in a coma for 10 days, he ultimately did wake up and then started the long journey of rehab. So it took a long time to rehab, as you all know how this goes. So I not only work in mental health, but I have a personal connection to traumatic brain injuries. I continue to support my son through his, but also what it's like on the entire family when there's someone with a traumatic brain injury. So oftentimes other members of the family are sort of left off to the side and everybody's focused on the patient, which is good. We should be focused on the patient, but I like to remind people to focus on all the other family members who are affected when there's a tragedy or somebody is born with a condition that leads to a brain injury. So I really want to open up the conversation to include all the family members. At last year's conference, I gave a talk on ambiguous grief, which talks about the grieving process that happens with when somebody has gone through a medical crisis or a TBI or something like that. So that's just a little bit about my background. On my website, there's actually a description about what happened with my son and a presentation that I give about basically what it's like for the parents to stay by the side side of a child who's been injured in this way. So anyway, if you want to read more about my situation, but I wanted you to know that I have a personal connection to Team Luke Hope for Minds, and also the whole sort of just TBI experience, and how that changes life kind of forever, for good and for bad. So I would love to have this opportunity to talk to you about meditation and mindfulness. It is a really important topic, but it is one that people have a lot of hesitation about. So I'm going to talk to you about that. You can see in the outline here, I'm going to talk to you about what is mindfulness meditation, why is it useful, but also a lot about what keeps us from doing so. And then some tips on how to get started. You know, I at first, when I was asked to give this talk, a couple of months ago, I thought, well, I am the worst person to talk about meditation, because I resisted it for decades. I thought it was stupid. I thought, well, it's just all, who can just sit and do all that breathing? When you're just breathing, you're not really doing anything. And I had a lot of judgment about it. And I just thought, well, that's ridiculous. Like, what could I actually benefit? How could I benefit from focusing on my breath? So, and anyway, it was actually the the incredible stress of my son's event. Like a lot of you, we were in hospitals for a long time, and the toll that it took on me and my daughter as involved observers of what was going on was pretty big. We were both diagnosed with PTSD after his incident, and we are both still in treatment today, so that's a good thing. But it was finally getting to the maximum of my stress and trauma from his car accident that sort of forced me into meditation. I reached a point where I was like, I have to do something, but I can't really do a whole lot because I need to be at home caring for him. And so my daughter, who was really big into meditation, said, just meditate. You don't need to leave the house. It's free. Just give it a try. So it was actually his experience that sort of pushed me into it. So then I thought, well, maybe I'm a good person to talk on this, because I was such a resistor for so long. And then I experienced it myself and saw the benefits. So as you're listening and watching, you might want to take some notes, because, you know, anytime we talk about mental health, things get stirred up in us, things get triggered. So you might want to just jot down more of like a stream of consciousness, what comes up for you while you're hearing and listening to this. And just, if you're not, when you start your first meditation, you could actually meditate about your notes. You could meditate about what came up for you and what maybe activated something in you. So meditation is, you know, there's so many ways to look at it. There's so many definitions of it. And I think what makes it so complicated on some level is that it sounds like such a simple concept, but it's difficult to put into practice. So I like to think of mindfulness meditation with this definition. You know, we have sort of like a stereotypical image of, you know, someone sitting yoga style and being silent and breathing with their eyes closed for hours and hours on end. And that's certainly one form of meditation. You know, there are people that do this all day long, and this is what they do, and that's okay. But for those of us who have jobs and children to care for and doctor's appointments and rehab to get people to, an all-day meditation practice probably doesn't serve us very well. So what I like to think of it is this: it's non-judgmental awareness of the present moment. So the non-judgmental to me was the critical piece that I had to really get my arms around. So I hear a lot of, "Well, I'm doing it wrong. I can't stop thinking about things." And you know, people often talk about clearing your head. That may be a type of meditation, but when we talk about mindfulness meditation, I like to think of mindfulness meditation as meditation for regular people, people with like jobs and kids and families and a million things to get done. Is you're actually removing all of the judgment. You're aware of your present moment. and that's it. So, and when you start doing the shoulds, oh, I should be clearing my head, or I shouldn't be doing this, those are judgment words, right? So the most important thing we want to do is start removing the judgment. So whatever comes into your head is what comes into your head, and that's okay. So let's start walking through this a little bit. So you want to be aware of the present moment. So you're not thinking about the past, you're not thinking about the future, you're not thinking about what you're going to do an hour from now. You're being still in the present moment and inviting in whatever comes in. Now, again, as a lot of people talk about clearing your head, what you really want to do is simply notice your feelings and thoughts as they come and go. So when I'm meditating, sometimes I am thinking about the big project that I have to get done, or the webinar I need to record, or maybe a client who I know is struggling, and they've been on my mind a lot. And instead of saying to myself, "Oh my gosh, what are you doing here? Like, I'm supposed to be clearing my head. I'm not doing this right." The idea is to invite that in and say, "Okay, I'm thinking about that client right now." And then you return to the breath. So there's really not a are you doing it wrong mindset. So it's about being aware in the present moment and noticing your feelings and thoughts as they come and go. Mindfulness meditation is used to regain control over our attention. So if you think about what has happened to our attention spans, in particularly in the last 10 years. During COVID, a new word has come into play into our society. You may have heard it. It's called doom scrolling. And doom scrolling means people who spend all day on their cell phones, scrolling through the news, scrolling for social media, looking for information, looking for things to confirm their worst fears about COVID, TBIs, anything. And so it's called doom scrolling because you're just constantly scrolling and all you're seeing is scary news, sad news, challenging news. And so then as we're constantly scrolling, our brain is adapting to this constant influx of information. And so our attention spans start to suffer. And so mindfulness meditation, even if you only do it for a few minutes, is an opportunity to regain control over our attention span that has been robbed basically by the 24-hour news cycle, by social media, by all those other things that distract us all day long. So, you hear the phrase in mental health, one day at a time, just take it one day at a time. And by the way, I never understood that phrase until my son's accident. I was just always trying to do a million things and accomplish a million things. And I couldn't imagine how somebody could live one day at a time. And, when his accident happened, somebody's like, just it's one day at a time right now. And actually, and I was like, okay, they're like, just focus on today, just today. Not is he going to wake up from the coma? What's rehab going to be like? Just, one day at a time. But meditation cuts that even smaller. It takes it to 1 minute at a time. So when we're meditating, all we have to focus on is that 1 minute and our breath and what thoughts are coming into our head. And that's it. So when we say that's it, of course, that makes it really, really simple. And I'm going to talk to you at the end more about how to get a meditation practice going and how you could get started. And, again, I was someone who was just thought it was ridiculous for a very, very, very long time. And now I can't imagine a life without it, but I am disappointed in myself that it took so long to come to the table, but that's okay. I'm here now, and so that's important. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the benefits of meditating. And besides that, it gives you a break from everything we are bombarded with all day long, whether it's news, social media, to-do lists, children who need us, partners who need us. Besides that it gives us a nice mental break, there's a lot of brain science that hones in on why meditation is useful and helpful. So I want to roll through some of that because some of these things, or actually most of them, are pretty relevant to people who are dealing with TBIs or children who have been seriously ill or chronically ill, because of those experiences can sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes lead to what I went through, which is being diagnosed with PTSD, having some mental health issues that needed some pretty involved and direct therapy. So I'm going to be talking about those and relating them to our experience as caregivers and family members and loving partners. So let's start with this. So they've done a lot of studies on meditation. I mean, if you Google it, you'll find a lot of studies, and they're doing even more and more because the research is really pointing to the incredible benefits of a regular meditation practice. And by the way, right now, if any of you are saying to yourself, well, I don't have time, there's no way I have time, you're going to see at the end when we talk about a meditation practice, it's like 10 minutes a day. That's it. If you can do more, fantastic. But when I use the phrase a daily meditation practice, I'm talking about like maybe just even 10 minutes, 20 if you can do it. So I don't want you to, if you're thinking already, well, like I don't have an hour to sit and breathe. A lot of these studies did like daily meditations based on 10 to 30 minutes. All right, so this first one is they basically have people in two different groups, those who meditate, those who don't. And after the 8 weeks, everybody gets their MRI, their brain scanned. So one of these studies, they did an 8-week course of mindfulness practice. So of course, the brain was scanned before and the brain was scanned after. So the amygdala is a really, really important piece as it pertains to trauma or grief or loss. So the amygdala is the center of the brain where our fight or flight center resides. So that's what we think about with PTSD, right? A lot of, or even just straight up trauma, is it can activate a traumatic event, can alter the amygdala, and make that fight or flight response really, really strong. And that's, I can go into on a whole nother presentation on why that fight or flight, what that does to us long term. But the amygdala, is associated with fear and emotion. And so it's how we respond to stress. Well, after 8 weeks of meditation, the amygdala shrunk, and we want it to shrink, by the way. So the bigger it got, the more inflamed, the bigger the fight or flight response. So after 8 weeks of mindfulness meditation, the amygdala started to shrink. So for people who experience trauma or a lot of grief with a traumatic event, you can see the benefits there of meditation. Now, as the amygdala shrinks, so remember that's a good thing, the prefrontal cortex, which is the front of the brain that's associated with higher order brain functions like awareness and concentration and decision making, becomes thicker. So we want our amygdala to shrink, and the prefrontal cortex that makes decisions and is aware and can concentrate, we want that to get thicker. So after 8 weeks, the amygdala got smaller and the prefrontal cortex got thicker. And then the areas of the brain, which there are many of them that are associated with attention and concentration, got stronger. So this is just after 8 weeks. So I think this is pretty good, compelling brain evidence. I want to show you some examples of those scans. So if you look at here, so you can see on the left, the amygdala is lit up. Okay, so remember, fight or flight. And the amygdala lit up with, if you look at the color chart on the right, the yellow is the highest, the hottest. And so this is amygdala before meditation, and it was at its most extreme level. And then the scan on the right is after 8 weeks. You can see that the amygdala is less activated. It's coming down on the color chart. So that's what we want to see. So they've been able to see this in the brain scans and see it actually making a difference. Another scan that's really interesting talks about that prefrontal cortex. Remember I said we want that to thicken. So in the same 8-week study, as the amygdala shrunk, the prefrontal cortex got thicker. And so you can see it here. The scan on the left is pre-meditation, and you can kind of see the prefrontal cortex is not very well organized. It's kind of scattered. There's some really, really thin parts. But then you look on the right and you can see the prefrontal cortex coming together. and it's as a like a solid working piece. And again, that's what we want. And by the way, these studies and these scans were across the ages, from teenagers to older groups. So they see that these changes in the brain are apply to everyone. So more about the brain, because more and more studies keep coming out talking about the benefits of meditation on the brain. So I'm gonna give you some more information. So how about this? Another study of 8 weeks of mindfulness meditation. So remember, thickening is good. We like thickening. Well, the hippocampus, which is the part of the brain that governs learning, memory, and emotional regulation, there was an increase in the thickness of the hippocampus. So that was if you think about one thing, especially as it relates to traumatic events in our family, one thing I noticed after we'd been in the hospital for a long time was my memory wasn't that great. I was starting to kind of forget basic things. If I remembered that I needed to do some paperwork for my son, normally I would have remembered all that stuff, but I was just trying to kind of not have the best memory. And of course, that is related to the ongoing stress when you have a child in that situation. So I obviously, and my emotional regulation, of course, was not fantastic because this was a very scary event, like a lot of you can relate to. So to see that, 8 weeks of meditation can help with that memory and emotional regulation through the hippocampus was really, really encouraging to me. And by the way, you don't have to wait for a traumatic event. Increasing the capabilities of our hippocampus, our prefrontal cortex, and downgrading what the amygdala does can help anybody at any time. So I wouldn't wait for a traumatic event, but that's what it took for me. So again, we want cortical thickness all over the brain if we can get it. So meditation practice has been associated with increased cortical thickness in these areas listed there. So attention, sensory processing, and something called interoception. And this is interoception, if you don't already know what it is, it's a lesser known sense that we have that helps us understand and feel what's going on in our body. So whether or not we feel emotional triggers, we're feeling physical sensations, or those kinds of things. If you've been in therapy, they'll often talk to you about like where you start to feel things in your body. So being able to sense and understand what you feel in your body is important from a mental health perspective, but also physical health. People who have altered states of interoception may have trouble with self-regulation. So meditation can help thicken these areas and make the brain work better here. Now, when we talk about long-term meditators, there are people who wind up doing this, for decades. I wish I could say that I'm that structured and scheduled. I often forget. So, but for people who have made this really part of their lives, interestingly enough, is they started to see structural differences of the brainstem. Now, a lot of you, because of learning about the TBI world, already know a lot about the brainstem, but brainstems, basically, the brainstem actually governs our daily living, breathing, heart rate, those kinds of things. So the brainstem mechanisms for cardiorespiratory were improved in long-term meditators. So another thing to think about. And finally, there's other things, but I just want to kind of give you the highlights. In one study, they did 4 weeks of meditation, and this showed positive changes in the brain, white matter. And this is that part of the brain that I talked about that talks about self-regulation. So we've done a lot of sort of gray matter stuff. Well, they saw positive changes in the white matter and in the area that was helping with self-regulation. So self-regulation, of course, is important when we're talking about, learning to manage the intense emotions that we're feeling, trauma, grief, loss, those kinds of things. So, so this is a lot of brain science that seems to really reinforce how helpful meditation can be. So, for me, it was a lot of learning the brain science that made me finally a believer. That's just how I'm wired. And so when I started seeing the brain scans, that really spoke to me. So maybe that meant something to you as well. There's some other sort of non-brain science reasons to meditate. I want to start before I give you this list. I want to like talk about briefly what is going on in our world. So if you think about, I've already talked about the nonstop information, the bombardment of information. There's this, I don't know about you, but at any given moment, I'm trying to read several different books and articles, and there's just so much information to process, and people's birthdays to remember, and there's just so many things. Um, Meditation gives your brain a vacation. That's how I like to think of it. If you go from an evolutionary perspective, our brains were not hardwired for today's society. Our brains have not evolved that much since, thousands of years ago. Our brain functions pretty much the way it did back then. Our brain's number one job is to keep us safe and help protect us. That was the number one function thousands of years ago. So we have taken a brain whose job was to help us learn, protect us from threats, help us relate to other people, create community, and we've bombarded it with just nonstop information. So, since our brains weren't hardwired for this modern life, we need to give it a vacation every now and then. So, I like to think of daily meditation as that vacation. So, here's some other reasons. It is widely accepted as a part of a useful treatment plan for anxiety and depression. Therapists will often talk about the usefulness of meditation, try to bring that into the conversation. Um, there are countries, not the US, but every country sort of has their own take on dealing with mental health, and there's a couple of countries that they actually won't give you mental health medications until you've attempted a meditation program. Now, I'm not commenting on the use of anti-anxiety medications or antidepressants, but in those, and certainly they have incredible, wonderful uses and have helped a lot of people. I'm just saying, as part of an analogy, that in these countries, they have found that the benefits of meditation are so tremendous that they want meditation to be part of the treatment plan when any medication is used. Um, it is regularly used as part of chronic pain management. So if you think about all the ways that it helps reshape the brain and reorganize the brain, that is definitely going to have an impact sometimes on chronic pain management. So, not that meditation can make your chronic pain go away, but it can be a useful part of managing chronic pain. So, our sleep is just part of an ongoing conversation in our society. Um, you know, People who were I've heard from people who were sleeping fine before COVID that they're not sleeping fine now. They're having really crazy nightmares. There's a lot of stress with what's going on. So stress levels are elevated. So sleep is not going as well for some of these people. And for people who already had trouble sleeping before all this, they might be having even more of an issue. So learning to be still and quiet the mind can help with sleep. I'm going to talk about that at the end, how you might want to use it to help with sleep. Again, I'm not saying this is the fix for everything and the catch-all solution, but it can definitely be part of a plan to have better and higher quality sleep. So it can be used in the moment, and I put that in quotes, to help when dysregulated. So when I went back to work after my son's incident, I found that I was sometimes caught off guard. All of a sudden, I was overwhelmed with emotions of everything we'd been through and we're still going through. I was feeling dysregulated. Sometimes I'd just all of a sudden cry. It was just, it impacted us for a very, very long time. And quite frankly, for the rest of our lives on different levels. So I started using it at work to sort of just get regulated again so I could finish my day. I would have these really short meditations that I would use that was just sort of help reset things temporarily till I could get home or till I could get to a therapy session or whatever it was. But it was a nice way to sort of get me back on track so I could finish out the day. Um, and then it's got a lot of long-lasting impacts, as I've already talked about, but also um, when they have studied people who have meditated for a long time, they keep scanning their brain. When these individuals are not meditating, they're just sort of going about their day, and then they go in for a scan. They find that the positive effects on the brain maintained during the time they weren't meditating. So it's not like they meditated and the brain got thicker and everything got better and then it stopped when they stopped meditating. They had the positive neural effects throughout the day. So that's another good reason to try to develop a long-lasting practice if it works for you. But for me, when we think about why should I be doing this, life is messy, life is scary. Life can be beautiful as well, full of joy and peace, but none of us go through life without being tested or having challenges thrown our way. So, there's a really great quote by an author that says that pain is, everybody has pain, right? So pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. So it's how we manage that pain that comes to us that decides whether or not that pain becomes suffering. When I digress just a little bit, but we will have pain come our way. And the more you can process the feelings of what's gone on and be really authentic with your feelings, then you can process that pain without it becoming suffering. And meditation can be a part of that, to help you process that pain. And I think this is perfectly captured in this quote that, life is going to be what it's going to be. It's very unpredictable. But meditation makes our heart better able to accept these challenges and these things that come to us. And sometimes just gets us ready for the next day to face whatever it is that we need to face. So, you know, right now is about the time when people say, well, I don't want to meditate. I can't do it. I don't know how to do it. So let's go through what holds us back. What keeps us back? What holds us back from meditating? I kind of already told you my experience. Um, I never understood the benefit of being still or quiet. I just thought that was ridiculous. And then, when I reached my maximum, I had no choice but to give it a try. So, I like to call the first thing that we face is the paradox. And what I mean by that is, our brain is a cruel, cruel thing sometimes. Um, our brain is trying to protect us. It is betraying us all day long, unfortunately. And sometimes the thing we need in our life, the thing we need to accept, the feeling we need to process, the experience we need to process, is the exact thing we fear doing, so we don't do it. So we get caught in sort of this mental health um, paradox. And then doing something positive like meditating generally means that something else is going to stop, whether it's our extreme worry or anxiety. Usually it's those things. But starting to meditate and learning to quiet our mind means that's going to have to stop. Well, that brings up its own host of fears as well. Well, if I stop worrying, um, what if other things happen? If I sit and be still and I'm not achieving anything, so what's going to happen if I stop and be still? What will happen to my life if I stop and give my brain a vacation? Um, what if I had to let go of some of my coping strategies by learning to meditate? So the paradox is this really cool thing that can help us process things better, can tend to raise more questions and more anxieties. So that's a very real sort of concern, which I like to call the meditation paradox. I've heard this before. I've said it to myself. It's hard to calm my mind. Or like I said before, it's not about fighting the thoughts. It's not about pushing them out. Um, it's not about emptying it. It's about inviting things in, noticing the thought, acknowledging it, and sending it on its way. It's like if you're sitting at a stream and you can see, a leaf coming down from upstream and you're noticing it as it comes by you. So that's the thought. It's just coming in. The leaf is coming by and you say, hey, there you are, leaf. There you are, scary thought. There you are, to-do list. And then you let it float past you for your during the meditation time. So it's not about calming the mind. It's about being present what's happening in your space. I don't know how to do it. What if I do it wrong? I've already kind of addressed this a little bit. There's not a lot of wrong. There are, of course, people that say, well, this is only one right way to do it, which I don't believe in that. You do what works for you. A well-used phrase today is you be you, right? So you be you. You know what? I don't like to sit for meditation. I like to lay down. So I lay down. Will some people tell you that the right way to do it is to sit? Probably. But you know what? Whatever gets it going and whatever works for you, do it. It could be sitting down, laying down, silent meditation, guided meditation, using music. Do what works for you. Whatever gets you into that space, then that's the right way to do it. Yeah, I've already kind of addressed on this too. I don't have time, right? I mean, I say that about everything, but 10 minutes a day, even 10 minutes is enough. So I was, when I was like, well, I don't have time, how would I get started? I was thinking, well, if I play on my phone for 10 minutes less, right? If I lay in bed for 10 minutes before going to sleep, maybe I could do it then. So find something in your day that's maybe not serving you very well or enhancing your life very much, and maybe take 10 minutes of the time from that and put it towards your meditation practice. Interestingly enough, as we've seen from the brain science, regular meditation helps with concentration, clarity, focus, memory, right? All those things. Well, when those things are working better, we are actually become more efficient at our tasks. So you may not notice as much brain power needed to accomplish some of your to-do list because you're meditating, which means you have better attention. So might be something worth trying. Okay, so this was the one that was like the area where I was like, I just don't know how to get around this because I think it's going to be boring. All right, well, if you think it's going to be boring, then do what I do. I only do guided meditation. I don't do any silent meditation. I admire tremendously all the people that can do silent meditation. And but I'm not there yet. So maybe someday. But so for now, I use guided meditations. I'm going to talk to you about some of those options in the next slide. And if you're not feeling like you want to meditate on yourself right now, you can meditate for another person. Or an experience. You can send love and energy to somebody else who might need it. There are times where I didn't want to think about my stuff or give that gift to myself for whatever reason. So you can give it to somebody else. Send love, light, and energy to somebody else in your life. All right, so that's what holds us back. So now we know how to work around all of those things. So then how do we get started? First is sort of putting yourself in the right frame of mind. And I've already talked about this. Be kind to yourself. Get rid of the judgment. If you only had time to meditate for 5 minutes, great. That's perfect. You want to lie down instead of sit down? Great. However you want to do it, but get rid of the judgment. And anytime you hear the word should coming into your mind, that's a judgment word. Just sort of send it on its way, because this is the space to be kind to yourself. If you can, find a regular time to help create a habit. I know that's not always possible when you're caring for another person or people. They seem to need us at moments that we didn't anticipate. But if you can find a regular time, then it's easier to create the habit. If finding a regular time is challenging in your world, then maybe a calendar reminder that goes off, just something to help remind you, because it's interesting how many times I forget. to meditate. Like, you think I'd be like, just remember that, but I get busy in my world or busy in my space, and I don't necessarily focus on that. Keep it brief. Like I said, you don't have to be a monk who sits on the floor for 6 hours in the silence and meditates. That's a different style of meditation, effective, but a different style. So keep it brief. If you're not sure how to get started, just say to yourself, okay, maybe I could do this for 5 minutes. Maybe do that for like a month, and then see if you work up to 10 minutes. Find a posture that works for you, something you like. You could lay on a yoga mat if you don't want to sit up. You could sit with your back to a wall. You could just sit on the floor. I just lay in my bed because it's comfortable. But whatever works for you, it'll be just fine. Choose a type that you enjoy, because obviously in life, when we do things that we enjoy, we're more likely to stick with them and do them. So if you like silent meditation, go for it. You want guided, great. You want to go to a meditation center, knock yourself out. Whatever type you choose, and if you enjoy it, you're more likely to stick with it. So a great way to get started is with meditation apps. So there's a lot of great ones out there. There's a lot of ones you can buy subscriptions for. They're all really, really great. I particularly like Insight Timer. You can load up the app, and they've got a vast amount of meditations for free. You can pay for a subscription, get some other stuff, but so far I've been able to use free ones, and I've not near come close to running out of new ones to try. What I like about Insight Timer is it's organized. You can search for a meditation you want by time. So if you only have 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour, you can sort by time. You can sort by topic. So you can go to the anxiety section, and there'll be a guided meditation on anxiety. They have them for sleep. So I've sometimes used a guided meditation in the sleep category to help me calm my mind so I can sleep. I use a lot of, you can search for just music. So I use a lot of music. Like if I wake up in the middle of the night, I'll put on one of those meditation music that I've saved, and use that to sort of calm my mind to go back to sleep. You can also bookmark things as your favorites. So, I have lots of stuff in my favorites. So when I'm feeling dysregulated, or I need time, I need the space to kind of just meditate, I've already got them right in my favorites. I go right to my favorites, I click, and there it is. So, it's not that I don't, Insight Timer doesn't pay me to promote this. It's just the one I use that I love, but they're all good. So check one out, see what works for you. Other options is think places like Spotify have spa or meditation playlists. So I use a lot of aromatherapy also. So if you've got a diffuser, you've got like a spray that you can spritz your room. I do use a lot of aromatherapy, but I've really started using a lot of the spa music or meditation playlists. So if I need to calm myself, sort of to do a big project for work, if I have to write something, I'll put this on. Another thing that's really great about Spotify is because you can download their playlists to listen offline. So I'll be honest, I'm a nervous flyer. So I found what really, really helped me was I downloaded a Spotify playlist full of guided meditations on anxiety. And so since I can listen offline, when I get on an airplane, I just start running through that playlist, and I focus on my breathing, and it's working out really well. So there's just so many options. If you are on Amazon Prime, they've got some of these on there as well, available for free. So, find the medium that works for you, and just go for it. Give it a try. Maybe start with the music, but I hope that you find it meaningful and beneficial. And if nothing else, remember, we do need a break every now and then. So I love this quote. And oh, by the way, I forgot to mention this book. Sorry. So Dan Harris wrote a book called 10% Happier, and you may know of his story, but he was a newscaster and had a full-blown panic attack on live TV. And after that, he realized he needed to get a handle on his anxiety. And so he started meditating. And somebody asked him, what do you like about meditation? And he said, it makes me 10% happier. So he wrote a book called 10% Happier. And he also has a podcast called 10% Happier, where he talks about meditation and brings in guests to talk about meditation. So you might want to check that out. But I do want to close with this quote that I like very much, because I think it's really important for us to remember that, everything needs to be unplugged every now and then. If your computer's not working, they always tell you to shut it down and turn it back on. And, half the time that kind of fixes it. Everything needs to be reset, unplugged and reset every now and then. And that includes you. So give yourself that gift of unplugging and resetting, whether it's through meditation, whether it's just going and sitting on a beach somewhere and just staring out. But give yourself a break from the technology, give yourself a break from the information, unplug, and just reset your life. And you'll be interesting to see what that does. So thank you for your time today. If you have any other questions or things you would like to ask me, feel free to go to my email address that you saw at the beginning. Be happy to have a conversation with you. Check out my website. Check out my blogs, and happy to help. So be well.